Return, O Virgin Daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's House of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.
Hello, this is Safani Pappas with B'nai Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director, and we're going to part 2 of our interview with Hayley Chase. Isn't that correct, Al?
That we are. Now, the stopping point in our first segment of our conversation with her was talking about worship, making the point that what we are often hearing in a worship setting are the uplifting songs, the mountaintop experiences. But what about the lows, the valleys, which, someone who is manically depressed, well, that's where they are much of the time. Hayley will pick it up at that point. But I want to ask you, Stefania, as we get into this, why is it that in our synagogue, our church, our Christian and our Messianic experience, why is it that we want to maintain that facade of happiness and being upbeat?
Well, I guess for one, it might be the whole idea of trust. We've gotten to the point where we have so many people have broken our trust that we have to put the facade up because we feel that we cannot allow them to see who we really are, because maybe perhaps some way that will be violated because we've been violated so much in the past.
That is certainly one way, one huge factor, trust and not wanting to be violated. I'm also thinking that there's this, shall we say, stereotype?
Yeah. From the other side, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, those who are
Yes.
following Jesus, those who are disciples of Yeshua, we should be filled with joy all the time. We shouldn't have a down day. We're
Absolutely.
not permitted to weep.
No. Yeah, exactly. It's not real. It's not a realistic understanding of the real world in which we live. And what did Yeshua himself say? In this world you shall have tribulation. And that means we will encounter times when we are weeping and we're feeling oppression from a particular situation that we're in. And that doesn't mean we're all supposed to have our smiley faces on and jumping up and down and being in joy. I mean, sometimes he said, blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. If I don't have an opportunity to mourn, can I then be comforted? Are you taking away my opportunity?
That's a valid question. Well, keep that in mind. Let's go on back to Rock Hill, South Carolina, and continue our visit with Hayley Chase. We were talking about worship. Where are the songs about walking through the dark places where I hurt and am questioning what God can do for me? Where are those songs? Because all we do is sing about joy and happiness and peace and being right.
Yeah, no, that bothered me a lot growing up too, was I listened primarily to Christian radio growing up, and it didn't seem like any of the reality of what I was experiencing was being discussed. And that was very alienating in a lot of ways, because I was like, all right, well, this is, these are all the other believers and this is what they're saying. And they're not struggling, clearly, because they're not talking about it. And, so it was like, it's just me. Like, I'm just out here by myself being a complete wreck, and nobody else is going through it. And I think there's actually been an amazing increase in the past few years of music and messages that share the reality of the struggle as well as the hope. And I love when I have actually an entire Spotify playlist of songs that, address the reality of things. Some really amazing artists, which has been wonderful.
Okay, so how common is this? I mean, you are feeling isolated and alone because everyone's singing about being happy in Jesus, and they have their church smiles. Whether you're a Saturday or Sunday church, it's the same phenomenon. Yes, how many of us sitting there or standing there in the worship service are feeling the same way?
Well, statistically, if we're going to look, it depends on whether we're looking at physically or mentally struggling. I know I've struggled with both. I have, CPTSD. I also have an autoimmune disease. If we're looking at mentally, the statistics would say right around 1 in 5 adults would be struggling with a mental illness. If we're looking at chronic physical illness, it's around 51% of Americans who have some sort of chronic condition. So it's very common. Both are very, very common. And, I do think that we have a tendency to see statistics like that or hear about them and say, all right, 1 in 5 have a mental illness, or, a little over 50% have a chronic illness of some sort. And just kind of, oh, but not in my church, not in my community, not in the people I know, even with the level of knowledge and experience I've gained over the years, I still have the tendency to do that. I still have the tendency to look at a group of people and say, they're all fine. Like, I know there's like 50 people over there and it says, 1 in 5, but not these ones. They're okay. Like, they're happy, they're smiling, they're interacting. So they're good. And I think we have a tendency, the people closest to us, the groups of people closest to us, to assume that they're not part of those statistics when they are.
Well, they are, which is why I would recommend, if you're looking for where are those 20% of mental conditions and 50% of chronic illness, might want to start looking in the mirror with some honesty.
Yeah.
But before we go further, let me just ask about definitions of terms. What is mental illness? We have stereotypes. We have ideas that have floated through our minds that have come from various sources, but how do we define a mental condition?
So if we're looking at the more proper definition, like if you were to Google, like the definition of mental illness, and then it could basically be summed up to say that, it's issues with your mood, with your thinking, with your behavior that are severe enough that they're impacting your day-to-day life. It is significant enough that it is impacting your ability to function. So that's when we're looking at, like, if I'm going to use a little analogy, and I know it's not the perfect one, but say you have a cold, a common cold, and you just have those normal symptoms. You're like, all right, this will pass. This will be fine. This is just a little thing. But then say you start to get a deeper cough, or, there start to be other symptoms that are, you can't go to work anymore. You can't get out of bed anymore. You can't, just function on the day-to-day anymore because you're so sick. And, that's when you have to start to say, all right, there's a more serious issue at play here, that this is not a situational anxiety. Like, all right, something happened with traffic and it's making me a little bit nervous, or something happened at my job and I'm, feeling some anxiety about whether I'm going to lose my job. It's not, it's not just situational. It's every day. It's all the time. It's about everything. And it's impacting your ability to function.
Okay. So we probably are thinking the stereotypes of schizophrenia or some kind of sociopathic thing that is depicted in movies.
Yeah.
But you're talking about, let's say, manic depression that causes you not to be able to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There are so many varieties, honestly, of mental illness. It's not, and that's something I will say the media has done a lot of damage with has been portraying certain things as just like, it always presents the exact same way. And it doesn't. None of it looks the same. One person's depression is not going to look the same as the next person. One person's, experience with schizophrenia is not going to look the same as the next person's. Anxiety, self-harm, suicidal urges, all of those things are things that, everybody's different. Everybody's experience with it is different, and how it looks is going to present differently too. And when we just kind of hyper focus on like, here's what a mentally ill person looks like as being this drastic extreme, that's like cinematic in some way, then it's not going to accurately depict what the day-to-day is.
Yes. Yeah. And I would venture to say that most of us will have no clue that this is what's going on to the person right next to you on the subway train or in the office or at church. For myself, until I began to walk through these things with someone I love very dearly and see that this person was absolutely not in control and this was not this person's choice, that's when compassion awoke.
Yeah.
And then realizing, you know what, I'm not immune either, which tells me no one's immune. And maybe we have all experienced some kind of mental illness, or maybe still are struggling with it. And maybe it'd be better if we stop pretending to be normal and start learning to care.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely important that we acknowledge our own struggles as well, that we talk about those, we share about those, to help kind of destigmatize it, to help share that people aren't alone, and I think it's a balance. We have to acknowledge our humanity and the fact that we do live in a fallen world, and we are going to experience some taste of suffering, of darkness. All of us are. We're all going to experience a taste of it, but it's going to vary from person to person, whether they've had anxieties or whether they have an anxiety disorder, so it's kind of a balance between saying like, yes, we're all human. We're all, in a broken, fallen world. And it's not like, oh my gosh, they're over there and they can stay over there because, like I don't experience any struggles. And also acknowledging when people are experiencing those struggles in a different way than we have as well.
Yes, because every person is unique. Let's shift a bit and talk about chronic physical conditions.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little more about what that means?
Well, again, if we're just it's a very similar definition in a lot of ways. It is something essentially that just doesn't go away. So we have our physical illnesses that are, they're every now and then, like a cold or the flu or, whatever it may be. And they're here and then they're gone and we're fine for, hopefully the rest of the year. And then we have our illnesses that, they're lifelong. They're not going anywhere. We have things like fibromyalgia or Lyme disease, autoimmune disorders. There are things that are going to be a physical struggle and a factor of kind of incapacitating us for the rest of our lives. And it's that repetition of it. It's that consistency of it that makes the difference.
Wow. And this is something that dawned on me, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago. We had a good friend who was constantly in pain, constantly fatigued. She was diagnosed eventually with fibromyalgia. But the relief that she had, the sense of vindication of, yes, there is something wrong. They found it. And then the understanding that just what you said, this is not going away. It's a lifelong struggle. But just the understanding that our friend really did have something that kept her from being quote unquote normal helped us to treat her with more compassion. You might say make allowances. Well, I don't know, understanding her condition and helping her get through it day by day.
Yeah.
But this too is something I don't know that we are equipped to recognize because we're geared toward normal, however that's defined. So I could ask you how the two are connected, mental illness, chronic illness. Well, you've just made that connection. These are things that don't go away. These are things that somehow or other impair a person and prevent them from operating, as society would say, normally to full capacity. And again, it's a daily, lifelong struggle.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think it's that repetition that tends to confuse people and upset people in a lot of ways. We don't like repetition. We don't like things that aren't easy to solve. And most of our culture's language surrounding illness in general is temporal. Get well soon. Are you better? It's we want an end point. We want things to be over. And we have a really hard time engaging with stuff and accepting stuff that isn't going to be over.
Right. We have a hard time with very visible things that are not going to be over, like the autism spectrum, for example, or Down syndrome. But even then, it's hard for us to deal with people who are struggling with these things and with families who are helping children, siblings deal with such things. So you have already said, Hayley, from your story that it seems at least some of the church, some of the people of God have a problem dealing with this.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the visible impairments, but especially the invisible ones.
Yeah.
What is the church in general doing as far as you have understood from your experience and research?
As far as how they're approaching it or improving in it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Is the body of our Messiah becoming aware of the fact that we have broken, hurting people right next to us? And how are we dealing with that?
I think there is progress. There is more willingness to discuss things, less judgment, less assumptions, at least in a lot of the churches, not all of them by far. But it is starting to be talked about more. There are more books, there are more podcasts, there are more pastors coming out and speaking on the topic and saying hey, I've struggled with mental illness too. I've struggled with suicidal urges too. And so it's starting to be more of an open topic. I think that the issue, one of them anyway, kind of lies in the fact that we're starting from kind of a very low point. We're starting from a point in the church where we haven't talked about this. We haven't done anything. We haven't, or worse, we've judged it. We've judged it and said oh, you're not a Christian, or you're, maybe demon possessed. Like, what's going on here? We're coming from a point where that's kind of the experiences that people who are struggling have had. And when you're starting from that, then it is such a big step up to say, all right, well, we're going to talk about this now. We're not going to judge it, horribly or dismiss it, but we can't stop there. And I think because it's such a big difference, it could be really easy for the church to say, well, it's all better now. We're talking about it. We're problem solved. There's no more work to be done here. And that is something I've experienced in churches, is, having churches where, the pastor would talk about it and would say, when we ask you how you're doing, we really want to know. We want an honest answer, even if you're miserable. And I remember kind of stepping into a church with that mentality, that philosophy, and being like, oh, okay, great. I can be honest about my struggle now. And then realizing very quickly that, people allowing you to be open did not equate them understanding how to respond or how to help. So now we were at a point where I'd say, all right, well, to be honest, I'm in a really, really bad spot right now. And they would just, oh, okay. So anyway, moving on. And, so they were willing to hear it, but not to respond to it. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the church is at right now. We're willing to hear it, but we're unequipped to respond to it.
Okay, so what kind of response would you like to see, and how do we become equipped to give that response?
Wow, that is a very complicated process. There's so much work to be done. I'm like, break it down into into talking points here. I think it is going to involve several things at the very least. One of them, I would say, would be less in our response and more in our education and in our language. And that's something I've noticed a lot of. We have a lot of very ableist, so to speak, language in our culture. And, we make jokes. We make jokes about, the weather being bipolar. We make jokes about psych wards. We make jokes about, so many things down that line that, people are hearing and they are internalizing that. And they're looking at that and saying, all right, these people aren't safe to go to.
Mm.
Barry Phillips and the Aleph Tav Band now sing We Need Your Healing.
Breath of heaven, breathe on us again. Let your wind blow, bring life to this land. Waters from above come pouring down. Wash this dusty clay, flood the thirsty ground. We need your healing, we want to live again. Only you can give us life, and that's your calling to those forgotten. Let your chosen ones arise. Blind eyes open, late jump and dance. The weak are made strong. Take a holy stand. Voices crying out, let your will be done. Sing, shoot now, let kingdom come. We need your healing, we want to live again. Only you can give us life, send out your calling to those forgotten. Let your chosen ones arise. We need your healing, we want to live again. Only you can give us life, send out your calling to those forgotten. Let your chosen ones arise. Breath of heaven, breathe on us again. Let your wind blow, breathe life to this land. Waters from above come pouring down. Watch the dusty clay, flood the thirsty ground. We need your healing, we want to live again. Only you can give us life, send out your calling to those forgotten. Let your chosen ones arise. We need your healing, we want to live again. Only you can give us life, send out your calling to those forgotten. Let your chosen ones arise. Mind eyes open, the late jump and dance. The weak are made strong, take a holy stand. Voices crying out, let your will be done. Sing, shoot now, let your kingdom come. Let your kingdom come. Let your kingdom come. Thank you, Yahweh.
Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Midrash portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones. With me today is Barry Phillips. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, David.
It's looking like we might end up doing a two-part here Midrash, and so this is obviously going to be the first of two. We recently talked about hope and related hope, the word tikva, hope, and related that to the word mikvah, which is what we often call baptism. But literally, it's a gathering together of water from the root kavah, which it's a gathering together, and all of this relating in that. But in that, we kind of discovered something else that I think we're going this direction with, and led to some interesting thoughts here. And that's another root that shares this word for tikva, hope, is the word kavah, and which means to wait or to wait upon, but also two letters, kav, which is a line, and not just like, something you draw with a pen or a pencil, but like a measuring line, a line that's used to make sure something is straight. It's there.
A plumb line.
A plumb line. And if you've ever worked in a kind of construction job and see someone putting up a wall, some will say, is that wall level? But others will ask you if the wall's plumb. And if you don't know what they're talking about, you could be sitting there scratching your head. Is it plumb? No, it looks white to me. Like, what are you talking about, plumb, right? That means, is it level? Is it straight? And this is something that goes back so many years, and very simple concept, really, because they would just take a weight and tie it to the end of a string and suspend it from whatever point, and gravity would do its work, and it would fall and it's straight down. So you would be able to see a straight line. So if you put that up next to a wall, you would know if it's bowed, bent, if it's not built right, if it's leaning, or whatever the case may be. So this plumb line was something that would be used as a measuring point to make sure something is upright. And it's in that area that we can really get a lot of thoughts in Midrash about this. It's a measuring tool in the aspect of we've got to see if we're lining up with it or if we need to adjust, because obviously if it's not straight, do you make the plumb line not straight, or do you have to adjust the wall?
Whoa, wait, right there. So, my son-in-law's father was a mason, in that, he did construction work. He built foundations. My son-in-law's done that work. I have some of the tools that they used here at the house for, he brought them here at one occasion to store for some reason. And in that toolbox was a plumb line. So you're building a cinder block wall for a foundation. The integrity of the entire structure depends on the integrity of the foundation. If the foundation's bad, you can build on top of it as elaborately as you want, paint it any color you want, decorate it to your heart's desire, but eventually something's going to collapse if the foundation is not built with integrity. So using the plumb line, one would be able to determine whether they have built a wall square or not, is the term. Is it square? Is it straight? You can't say good enough, especially when it comes to foundation. My question, David, to you then, is that why the Ruach HaKodesh is calling his people back to the Torah to re-examine the foundation of what we say we believe? If the Torah is not square and plumb as our foundation, or if we're not square and plumb with the Torah
as our foundation, do we build in vain whatever ministry, congregation, lifestyle, walk, generational teachings that we offer?
That's kind of going right down to the heart of the matter, Barry. I think that is the point. If we're not looking at the right, if we're off, well, what needs to happen? If the foundation is the foundation, it's set. Yahweh sets the foundation. Are we lining up with it? And if we're not, then no matter what happens, no matter how good we think it might look, no matter how close enough we think we can get it, at some point it's going to fail because it's not set properly. And this is making me think of a couple of scriptures here where others who are listening may have seen this as well. But another place we see the plumb line is in Amos 7, verses 7 through 9. It says, "This is what he showed me. Behold, the Lord was standing beside a wall built with a plumb line in his hand. And Yahweh said to me, Amos, what do you see? And I said, a plumb line. And the Lord said, Behold, I am setting a plumb line in the midst of my people, Israel. I will never again pass by them. The high places of Itzhak shall be made desolate, and the sanctuaries of Israel shall be laid waste. And I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword." Going down to Isaiah, if you go to Isaiah 28, 16 and 17, thus says the Lord God, "Behold, I am the one who has laid a foundation stone, a foundation in Zion, a stone, a tested stone, precious cornerstone, sure foundation." Every time I read those, I always hear the song, Barry. I don't know if anyone else does that, but I can't help it. It's me. But keep reading. "So whoever believes will not be in haste, and I will make justice the line and righteousness the plumb line, and hail will sweep away the refuge of lies, and waters will overwhelm." So what we see is this cornerstone is being set because the foundation has to be sure, the cornerstone has to be set, and anything else that is built has to be built on the foundation that is sure and solid and flat, and the cornerstone that is set in that. And that's the only way it's going to work. So what are we building? Are we building on that stone that was set in Zion, or are we building on our own ideas and our own foundations, our own things, like scripture says, wood, hay, and stubble, in the end, what's going to stand, right?
Right.
And I'm also thinking of being given here, one of the words for stone is Evan, which in my mind is a compound word. It's Aleph, Bet, and Nun, Sophit, but an Aleph, Bet is Av, which means father, and a Bet Nun is Ben, which means son. And so in a picture of the stone, we have a picture of the father and son, and the common of the two is the house, the Bet, the house. So the common of the two is joining together in the house, and it's a picture of the father and the son, and he is our measure of righteousness. He is the one that we set up against. And this is what I see here. He says, I'm going to set the plumb line in the midst of my people, Israel. So it's not just about building a temple. Okay. It's not just about building a wall for Jerusalem. It's about a plumb line set up against the people. And if we are set up to measure against the plumb line, which is the word, we're going to fall a little short. We're not going to be perfectly straight. And there's a lot we can see in the scripture regarding that, because I'm thinking of a couple other scriptures here. I kind of laying up back here for us again, Barry. I'm kind of setting you up. I know you got some stuff to say here, but I'm thinking of Job 38, 4 through 6. After Job is done complaining to Yahweh and about all these things that's happening, so Yahweh responds with, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? or what were its bases sunk, or who laid its cornerstone? So again, we have the idea of Yahweh saying, who measured the earth? Who set the cornerstone? Who did all of this? And again, it's all a picture of Yahweh. He is the one who measured everything, created everything, and set everything in order, which we also read in Colossians, where it says everything was made by him, for him, and through him, and by him all things consist, right? Zechariah 1:16 says, therefore, thus says Yahweh, I have returned to Jerusalem with mercy. My house shall be built in it, declares Yahweh Sabaoth, and the measuring line shall be stretched out over Yerushalayim. So again, here's the idea of a measuring line being stretched out over his people. And what's the point? What's the purpose of stretching out this measuring line? It's not just to see how good we are. Look, oh, I'm closer than you are. It's to understand this is the standard for Yahweh. And no matter how good we are, we're going to fall short. So how do we get straight? And that's only by submitting ourselves to be used in the hand of the builder, in the hand of the creator, the one who created us. The problem is that we always look at one another and pull our standards and the way we should live and the things we do by each other, which is addressed in 2 Corinthians 10:12. One translation reads, not that we dare to classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending themselves, but when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding. And there's a lot to be said about there, and I'm pretty sure you had something on that, but I know this is kind of a lot to go and cover. I'm going to let you talk for a minute here, Barry, but the idea here is, who is our standard? He is our standard because he is our righteousness. We have no righteousness in and of ourselves. So how do we move into that? Righteousness is righteousness no matter what. It's not situational ethics that was being taught, a few years back. Yahweh's standard is the same for no matter who you are. And that standard is his word. And we have to stop looking at, well, I'm better than that guy, or I'm better than that guy. That's not going to work. We have to look to him and understand in the areas we fall short, we submit ourselves to be used in his hand, and he will take us and make us what he desires for us to be.
Wow.
So
yeah.
There's a lot here, Barry. Which direction you want to go with this?
Well, I'm thinking about a few terms, David. You mentioned something other about situational ethics. What seems to be right for the given situation, which may not be right in another situation. It's akin to, well, we did the best that we could under those circumstances. We made the best judgment possible. That is sometimes valid. Sometimes it's, well, we tried to make everybody happy. Making everybody happy is not necessarily establishing justice. So our courts at times will render verdicts not so much on the evidence presented inside the courthouse, but the threat on the outside of the courthouse. The sliding scales of righteousness. Well, people just don't do that anymore. I'll give you an example on that, and it's something that bugs me, and maybe it doesn't bug anyone else anymore, but we have, I'll try to be careful as to how I explain this, but we have some acquaintances, families, etc., that a young couple has spent an extended period of time living together without the benefit of marriage. And then they have this big wedding, and they come down, and then, they want the ceremony to give some sort of affirmation to what they've already established.
Okay, everybody, that's all the time we have for this first part of this Midrash. We do hope you'll tune in next week for the second part. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts, questions, or anything that you would like to hear from us, please get in touch with us at reunionroadmap@b'nai-yosef.com. Shalom.
And now, Barry Phillips and the Aleph Tav Band sing Righteous Man.
A tree planted by the waters, a man whose leaf will never fade, and what he does will prosper. To rightly stand before you and be blessed in all I do. I need Torah for my light, meditate both day and night. Blessed is the man who does not have an evil walk, who does not stand in sinful paths, who does not sit with those that mock. To rightly stand before you and be blessed in all I do. I need Torah for my light and meditate both day and night. Stand before you and be blessed in all I do. I need Torah for my light, meditate both day and night.
Well, we have had the Aleph Tav Band, Barry Phillips Band, this show. Righteous Man is the song that they just finished. And then before that, We Need Your Healing. These are part of Barry's repertoire of original music. And then right in between there, we had part one of their Midrash, which they call Plumb Line Righteousness. Plumb Line Righteousness. Zephaniah, we were talking during the intro about mourning, weeping, sorrowing. Blessed are they who mourn, they will be comforted. That ties into what Hayley was sharing with us on her experience and the experience of so many of our brothers and sisters. So what I'm gathering is that it is not unrighteous to weep and mourn. In fact, often it is the right thing. But what we're looking for, as Barry and David are explaining, and we'll explain again next week, is how do our thoughts and attitudes and actions stack up to our Father's standard of righteousness? So carrying that further with the theme of the show, how does that translate into attitudes and actions toward these who are suffering chronic conditions around us, who need our help on a continual basis?
Okay, I want to go to something that was in the Midrash where they talked about a tool called the plumb line. I was recently just involved with trying to replace some boards on my deck. Okay, and I was at a men's group describing what I was doing, and then I found out, which I didn't know, there's a particular tool out there that one can utilize, because you're not going to get a single board that's straight. And they have this tool, it's called a board bender. And what it does is that the tool actually fits against the joist and actually presses the board so it becomes straight up against the other board. And then you start securing it down as you go along. And you have to bring this board bender all along the board to keep it so it's straight. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. And so really what Hayley is talking about in this whole discussion is this idea that we have to understand that not a single one of us are a straight board. And we need a board bender, okay? And what was interesting is, if you see how this board bender works, it puts pressure on the board in order to straighten it out. And sometimes what happens is that the Father uses circumstances in our lives to put where there's pressure involved, and the pressure actually helps us to come to the point of admitting that we have issues to face and deal with. And then we can actually go ahead and begin to address those and begin to walk in that healing and begin that healing process.
You're absolutely right. Now, it's obvious in a case where, for example, someone goes to prison because he or she is involved in, say, drug trafficking or some other crime. And, it may be that this person's grandmother has prayed him into prison. Why? Because that's where he meets Jesus. I know, and I'm sure you know, more than one person who has a testimony like that.
Yes.
We wouldn't want to go to such drastic extremes for someone suffering from, say, manic depression or fibromyalgia. But there are some things that do need to happen so that these conditions can be addressed. Now, what happens to the person who's suffering themselves, that's one thing. But the other over here is those of us, quote unquote, normal people. And by the way, I don't think any of us are normal.
Yes.
Put that board straightener of the Holy Spirit on us.
Exactly.
Yes. So that we can have the pressure exerted on us and stop trying to make everyone else bend to our definition of what is straight.
Yes. And then we can accommodate our brother or sister and walk with them, because we're getting straightened out. And so we can walk beside them and be fit and knitted together.
Oh, that's scriptural language. Oh, well, yeah, we have a long way to go, but
yes, we do.
I sure am glad that we have our master builder who is taking care of us, and his name is Yeshua.
Amen.
Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Reunion Roadmap. We will be back again next week with a new show. So until then, on behalf of Savanya Pappas, Barry Phillips, and David Jones, this is Al McCarn. Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.